Hello, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Chocobo Dash. Joining me once again is my wonderful co-host,
Elliot Lefebvre.
And I'm your ever-lovable Nell Celestine. We got an interesting show to line up for you today. It's going to be a bunch of rapid-fire topics because, as everyone knows, the live letter will be coming out in a couple of days after this goes live. So there's not really a lot of information flowing out right now. So we're going to take what we have, we're going to run with it, and we're going to go over some community news, some game news, as well as some opinions and beliefs. So, Elliot, what have you been doing this week, though?
Most of this week, I've actually been spending working on other things for my job over at Massively. The past week was WildStar's open beta, and I'm working on a couple of other projects for them. So I haven't been able to get in a lot of time on 14, but I have been getting some time in and putting some time aside for role playing, which is a love that we both share, but not as much. So with the making sure that I'm getting up my soldiery cap. Just a slight break. I'm looking forward to getting back into the game, starting with this reset.
I see. So, nothing in major, but you have you finished your Cobalt dailies?
You're going to ask me about that every week. No, I have not yet finished my Cobalt dailies.
You need to finish those.
I'm going to finish them. I'm going to finish them, and then you're going to have nothing to needle me over.
I don't know about that, but that's a start. Can't say I've done much better myself this week. It's been kind of a slow week. I've got hammered at real life work, so I mostly capped my soldiery, took care of a few things, did some RP, and got my group going on some other out-of-character stuff. But one of the things I did do, and this will lead into our first topic of the day, was I was actually participating and interacting with a live stream on Twitch over the weekend. It was, I'm going to butcher your name and I apologize, Saviana Alteris, or at Avella Singer. I will put the Twitter address in the description below. If you are listening on iTunes, you can check it out in the YouTube channel to find out. But they were doing a 24-hour stream of Final Fantasy XIV for Operation Supply Drop, which is a charity that provides support to basically soldiers on the front lines to give them something to do between combat and sleep, because a lot of the time they're getting stuff that's not really helpful. Go look it up, Operation Supply Drop. It's a really worthwhile charity. But anyways, her group, the free company called Hail to the King on the Exodus server, were doing the marathon for 24 hours on the 17th from 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. on the 18th. So major props to them for doing something exceptionally positive, not only with the community, but for another charity group.
I think, actually, I've noticed a lot of streams and a lot of community involvement and a lot of even promotion from the community team since the relaunch has gone live, which I think is a really great sign of just how passionate a lot of players in this game are and how much people want to both establish a community and give back to people, and how many bonds wind up being formed over this game.
It's a really incredible experience. Unfortunately, it was between paychecks, so I really couldn't help with the financial aspect, but I did my best to spread the word, and I went in and gave moral support and was talking with some people in the chat there for a little bit. It was a pretty fun time.
Now, speaking of the game's community as a whole, if you're watching this or listening to this and you still haven't gotten in on playing Final Fantasy XIV, well, I'm a little surprised that you're listening to us, but we're happy to have you just the same. But there is a sale running right now. GameStop.com is selling the digital version, the digital download of Final Fantasy XIV for $11.99 USD until June 2nd. So that's a chance to get, the digital download and the first month for less than it would actually cost you to subscribe for a month.
Not to mention the fact that even with the digital version, you can always upgrade to the digital collector's edition and get all the extra little bonuses there, including our wonderful, wonderful friend, the Fat Chocobo.
And if you haven't seen videos of the Fat Chocobo in action yet, I don't know what to tell you.
But yeah, feel free to check that out. It's supposed to be June 2nd. I'm not sure what time it's going to be closing, so just to be on the safe side, try to get in a little bit early. Try to get it before the end of the day on the 1st, because you never know.
I'm also not sure what the gift purchasing options are, so that maybe even if you have the game, it may be possible for you to grab that for a friend who hasn't tried it yet.
That's it's a great way to get introduced to the game, and it does help build the community up. So that way this game will last a lot longer. Now, speaking of things lasting, not everything can last forever, and unfortunately so much for the community, but fortunately for him, some of you may have heard of our community translator. By community, I don't mean official community, but the unofficial community translator for all the live letters for 14. Our Subligar-loving friend Reinhardt recently got hired by Square Enix, and as such is no longer able to do the live translations. Now, whether or not this means he'll not be doing live translations because he's going to be doing them here, or if he's doing other types of translation work for them, remains to be seen. But I am certainly hoping that we will be able to get timely information from the developers, because if we're going to be waiting a month and a half like the last time it took for us to get the live letter translations, I don't know.
I think that also kind of highlights one of the, I don't want to say issues precisely, but facets of dealing with being a Final Fantasy XIV fan, is that because the development team is Japanese, efforts are made to try and make sure that information is available at the same rate for everyone, but there's a certain amount of that they just can't do, because everything gets written in Japanese first, everything gets prepared in Japanese first, and then has to be translated over into English and French and German for players of other languages. So there's always a little bit of a lag in information. I think it's great that Reinhardt put so much effort for so long into translating everything and trying to make sure that fans across the globe had access to more info than they otherwise would have. And I really do hope that at least one of his duties working for Square Enix will involve continuing to provide that in a more official and paycheck-heavy capacity.
So, regardless, Reinhardt, we do wish you the best in your new job, and we hope that you can live your dream there, because honestly, who of us here would not want to work for Square for playing these games?
Now, speaking of playing these games, moving back onto the actual game as opposed to community news, one of the bits of news that has surfaced recently is that the Coil Echo buff has been capping out at 15% as opposed to 20%. Now, as we've mentioned before, the Echo buff, which is applied to a number of different bits of content now, buffs your speed, it buffs your how big your heals are, your hit points, it buffs your attack damage, so it buffs pretty much everything. The difference is that unlike, say, when you're doing one of the primals, where the buff is applied as long as you have been fighting for 3 minutes and then the entire group wipes, the Echo buff for Coil has been applied as a weekly thing, so every new week when you zone into Coil, it has been steadily increasing.
It was originally going to be 10%, then 20, then 30. And what happened was we got 10%, then the 2 week later, instead of getting 20, we got 15. And then 2 weeks later, people were wondering what was happening and why we weren't getting the 20 buff. I can understand that, we don't really know these things, because we were told when it would come and it didn't happen. So at first we thought it was Golden Week, because that's a series of holidays in Japan that can usually fall together in the same week period, giving majority of people there almost essentially a week off from work. So as to be expected, you can imagine that something like this would be like, okay, it's a week off, there's nobody in the office. That's reasonable enough to expect. But the week after that, we still hadn't heard anything. So people were asking about it, and eventually we did get told via a translation. I think it was Beohim. I might be wrong. Was the one who translated and brought it over for us, basically saying that they found out that the number of people clearing Coil, the number of people progressing through it, was sufficient enough now with the 15% buff that they felt it was no longer a necessary step to push it up anymore. So it's going to stay at 15%. It's not major, but it's enough there to help some stragglers.
It does also have the issue, though, of, there were people who were holding off either because, A, they, let's face it, are really not very good at the game and really needed that extra helping hand, or B, really weren't looking to get engaged in the ups and downs of Coil. And even with the buff, the first 5 turns of Coil are not a cakewalk, as I'm sure Nell will attest to. 15% is nice, 15% makes it a lot easier, but 15% does not mean you can run in, derp around, and point AoEs at your entire group and expect everyone to walk out okay.
You say that like I actually turned an AoE on my group or something.
There's no video evidence of it, so it's just speculation at this point.
Let me just adjust my halo here. There's security spots on it. The Echo buff does not change the mechanics per se, but it does make it easier to progress through and learn it. If you still want a challenge, you can always take it off. I mean, it's there just to help some people. But some things that aren't there to really help people, but are, let's get into some of the, I hate to call it this, but right now I guess the most appropriate term for this week's little segment is the bitch list.
That sounds about right, because we both have a few things that, George Carlin style, we are very unhappy about, and we'll spend a little while telling you all about. And Nell, why don't you fire this one off?
One that hasn't been, it's been steadily bothering me with the game lately, and it's just becoming more and more and more annoying, is the mail system. It's great that you can send things. It's great that you can send mail to people. The system of mailing is fine. The method of mailing it is ridiculous.
In order to mail an item to someone, in order to mail anything to someone, first you have to be friends with them. This is counter to almost every other game, in fact, almost every single other game that I can think of off the top of my head, where as long as you knew someone's name, you could at least send them a mail. If, for instance, Nell and I weren't friends in-game, I would have no way of reaching her in-game if she were not online, because I couldn't send her a mail, even if it was just because we hadn't sent a friend request to one another.
You can't send a friend request to people who are offline, by the way.
There's also the fact that every time you want to send a letter to someone, you have to click a menu and get a drop-down of all the characters on your friend list.
This is the part that bugs me, is the fact that it randomizes every time you zone.
Not only that, but you can't even just, it would be one thing if, okay, I could click the drop-down, or I can just type in Nell Celesti, whose name I know very well. But you can't even type in the name. You can't even type in the first few letters. You have to scroll carefully through the randomized list and try to find out where is that character's name. Maybe I passed it. Let me scroll back up. Not a problem if you have 4 or 5 friends. A real problem if you have, 40 odd friends, and a big problem if, you're pushing 100 friends and you're just trying to find one person, especially if it's one person's alt that isn't online and you just want to send them, a couple pieces of armor.
Yeah, that's me. I have over 100 friends.
I'm a little less popular than Nell is, but I'm still... It's still a real chore to sort through my friend list. I'm at about 75.
Let's put it this way. More often than not, if the person is online, it's faster for me to find them, teleport, Chocobo to them, give them the damn item, and teleport back than it would be to sort through the goddamn list and find their name.
That's a little...
That's a bit excessive, and it's not bad, but that's the point.
No, I totally understand. Half the time I would rather just go to someone than mail them an item, especially since, if I don't already have them on my friend list, then I have, okay, let me add you on my friend list, then let me find your name in the list, and you know what, screw it. I'll just teleport to Limsa and meet you there, okay?
It doesn't even sort it by online and offline, or the last time you sent them a letter. It just, you zone in, and it goes, okay, here's your friends list, shuffle, 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 shuffle.
And as long as we're complaining about lists and about these systems, why exactly is it that I can be a member of 8 total link shells, but I can't sort the order in which those link shells show up? No matter what I do, there is no way, for instance, that I could move any of my link shells around. I have my Free Company's link shell as link shell number 8 because I was high on link shells at that point. I've since discarded a couple, and I have a couple of blank spots in the list, but I can't reorder anything. I can't move it around.
And you can only sort the actual list itself in the link shell by it's the default is join date, or you can sort by online offline. That's it.
As opposed to anything else like, I don't know, alphabetical order, or location, or company, or language, or anything else in the world.
It's little things. It's little things. Don't get us wrong. But
these are not game breakers.
These are not game breakers, but they are so annoying, and things that could probably be fixed very, very easily. With the mailbox, they don't even have to change the whole friends list thing. They could keep that, but sort it so that way it's either your friends list in alphabetical order, sorted for online, offline, or give the ability to start typing the first couple letters of the name. It's not that hard, and it would save so much time and so many hassles of trying to find people's names when you have a longer friend list.
Speaking of things that would not be hard to change, I'm going to launch into one of my own personal pet peeves here, which I'm not sure if it's about on par with your personal rage about the randomized friend list every time you mail something. Every single time I run one of the new hard modes, or I run Lost City, and I get to the last boss, and it's like, okay, this has a chance to drop the body equipment that I've been looking for a while for a vanity set, and we kill the boss, and I open the table, and it's an aqueous whetstone.
Or better yet, cooking cherry.
Something that I could buy plenty of with my Grand Company seals, which I also have tons of, in the unlikely event that I particularly cared. Why are these items on the loot tables? What is it about these? I understand that they want to keep the, items that used to be available via philosophy available to players. I understand that completely. But putting these in as loot is the exact opposite of a reward. These are crafting supplies that, by and large, are not even all that useful or desired at this point.
I think the reason why they're there, and this is my thought on the matter, is they're there because all the other Philosophy Stone items drop there.
And that's completely legitimate, but at the same time, when you're already dealing with the fact that these dungeons drop Darklight equipment as well as a new set of 70 equipment. You're already, dealing with the fact that you only have a chance to get the piece that you want at the end of the dungeon. When you couple all that with the fact that you might not even get the equipment, and there's much like with the Atma system that we have spent far too much time mentioning why it's problematic, when you can't even control the odds you have of actually getting a piece of equipment, it becomes really frustrating to see these crafting drops.
Well, what they should do, at least my belief on this matter, is for the boss chests, there should be 2 separate lists for the drops. You should get 1 piece of equipment and 1 crafting item.
I think that would be an excellent compromise, and especially since the crafting items are lower in demand at this point. they're worth a little bit of gil.
They're worth chump change.
Yeah.
You could probably get 3 repairs, maybe 2 repairs out of it.
Yep. It's nice to have, but it's fundamentally no different than, getting a few bronze pieces back under the old loot system. It would be much better to have that be a bonus rather than here's all the loot you get.
I did a whole bunch of dungeons last night, and there was, I think, 2 Brave Boxes that we ran where we got nothing but cooking sherry and filtered water.
Filtered water. Oh, boy. Also, I wonder why the game has, 7 different varieties of water, which all come down to we filtered this in some way. But that's a different discussion.
Well, I suppose if you look at it from that perspective, lots of different pointless items reminds me of something.
Are you thinking of the first version of the game?
Yeah, I am. We're coming up on almost 2 years now since 1.0 went down.
Yeah, and, there have been a lot of people reminiscing about 1.0, and Nell and I have both been playing since 1.0. We've been playing the game since it's launched, and since, setting your actions involved at least a 1-minute delay as the server interpreted your commands.
There was positives and there was negatives with 1.0, and there's a reason why the game was shut down and brought back. But that's not to say that the bad and the good were specifically outweighing each other. It's just there was problems, and those problems by and large couldn't be fixed with patches. The whole thing had to be rebuilt.
And there were, to be fair, I mean, we would not still be here if 1.0 was something we found so terrible that it was like, I don't want to ever look at this game again, because Lord, did 1.0 have some charms to it.
Actually, Elliot and I here met playing 1.0, so that's a good thing, I think.
Yep. But even beyond the social aspects, there was some fun stuff to be had in the game. There was, Nell, what was your favorite feature of 1.0 that is not in this version of the game?
My favorite feature from 1.0, that would be a hard one to say, but I'm going to jump out on a limb here, and I'm going to be crucified for this, but I would say Chocobo escorts.
That was your favorite part of
1.0? My favorite part from 1.0 that's not in 2.0.
Well, yes. I'm going to actually go ahead and say, because I can totally understand Chocobo escorts, but my favorite part was actually the sprawling, huge nature of every single map. Yes, I was tired of the Black Shroud after about 2 minutes, but the fact that every single area was so huge meant that you could see lots of little regional variations. The maps, there was more copy-paste going on than there should have been, but it really felt like every single region was sprawling and large, and there was a lot of space for you to explore. And, you could find certain places where, this is a little bit different than the other regions in, say, Thanalan, or a little different than other parts of Querthus. The whole zone as a whole would have a little more character to it, I found, as opposed to the smaller zones that we have now.
I can agree with that. I absolutely loved just wandering around Thanalan at times. There was quite a few places that were pretty much lifeless, but you could bring life there. You could make it important.
At the same time, I would not take back 1.0's tanking if it was that or being thrown down a well.
Well, it's good to know at least your tanking standards are still the same from 1.0.
I did not like 1.0's tanking at all. I would not, I enjoy tanking in 2.0. I've tanked runs for you. I have no problem tanking for people, but I would never want to go back to what 1.0's tanking was like. That was just miserable.
Well, we could go for a long time on our reminiscent points, but I think there's a better way to handle this. Elliot and I, actually, and quite a few other people, I got people involved in a project before 2.0 launched. The project was called I Remember, and you can actually look it up on my YouTube channel. Just You can even just go into YouTube and type I remember Final Fantasy 14 or FF14, however you wish. There will be a link to the playlist in the description below for those of you who are watching here. But basically, I got several people involved and basically telling their story of 1.0 with their hopes for 2.0's future. And a lot of them are really touching. A lot of them are very personal stories. So I would ask that if you listen to some of the stories and you don't appreciate their feelings, that's fine. But there's no need to be negative on those videos. Those are their memories. Those are their stories.
And they're actually very entertaining. I've watched all of them myself, and some of them they go from being funny to being touching to being special. They're all about a very personal reminiscence rather than fine nitpicking game mechanics or anything. So I think it's a really special project. I was happy to be a part of it. There are a lot of other wonderful videos in there, and if you want to take a trip down memory lane, I highly recommend it, whether you were or were not a player in 1.0.
Well, I think that's all the topics that we have for today. It's pretty much been a slow week, but with the live letter coming up very soon, I think we'll have a lot more to talk about next week.
I certainly hope so, because right now it's, to make a Final Fantasy XI reference, it's level 15 White Mage dead out there, so...
Oh, great, you're stuck in the dunes again.
I know.
Anybody who gets that reference, I applaud you. But I think that'll be it for today. As always, if you're on YouTube, you can leave a positive or negative comment in the box below. Like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. You can follow both of us on Twitter. I'm Nell_Celestine.
And I'm Elliot_Lefebvre.
And you can always check us out over on XIV Network. Just so you know, the comments posted in the videos there are usually responded to very late, because that's one of the last places we do check. You can always check out Elliot's personal site, which will also be in the description. And if you do have any questions or comments, you can Twitter us, post on the YouTube. However you wish to contact us that way would probably be best. But with that in mind, we're going to, I think, call it an end for today's episode. So
sounds about right.
This is Nell Celestine.
And Elliot Lefebvre.
And we are bidding you adieu.